Doing those jobs like delivering summons or being the sexton here, would that give you a sort of social standing? Would you, I mean, would you have felt like a pillar of society doing those jobs?
George Walker.
George Walker, yeah.
Oh, right, so...
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
And did he enjoy that side of things?
Yes, I think he did.
I think I'd say he did, yeah.
With such strong links to the Church of Ireland, George Walker and his family were at the heart of Carnew's dominant Protestant community. But life in the south of Ireland was about to change forever. Until the 1920s, Ireland had been one country, ruled from London as part of the United Kingdom. Between 1919 and 1921, the Catholic majority, under the leadership of Eamon de Valera, fought a bitter war of independence. It culminated in the partition of Ireland and the end of English rule in the south, which became the Irish Free State, later the Republic of Ireland. Suddenly, the Protestants in the south were a minority in a Catholic-governed country.
Granny was a royalist.
Yes, that's right.
She was a real royalist.
Yeah.
Granny Walker?
Yeah, Granny Walker.
Yeah.
She hated the Irish Army.
Yeah.
And she hated anything to do with De Valera. And she was all for England.
Yeah.
And she'd play God Save the King as they're going down to Mass.
That's right, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Surprised you had any Catholic friends.
Yeah.
Just as in Graham's childhood, in Carnew, Protestants and Catholics weren't encouraged to socialise. But May's friend John is Catholic.
The two of you would have gone to different schools.
Oh yeah, we went to different schools. Yeah,
but would you have played much together, or was it would have been very separate?
No, I myself played with the Catholic children, and but
would Grandad have been in favour of that or against it?
Yes, no, he would be in favour.
And was that rare at the time?
Yes, it was, because the Protestant children kept to themselves.
Yeah.
And what would have happened now if either a Catholic boy or a Protestant boy and a Catholic girl and a Catholic boy had started courting? Would that have been a great...
That would have been, I imagine,
yes.
yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah,
well,
terror,
she would have to turn, or whoever was the...
Would have to turn Catholic.
Yeah.
And it's weird, and I suppose it all just seemed normal at the time.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was
no,
nothing.
No, that's right.
Yeah, it was just something you accepted.
Yeah. Well, it turns out my grandfather, George, was sort of Superman. He did everything in Carnew. He was much more establishment than I thought. I mean, he really was very closely connected to the church, and that was his big passion, I think. Now, his father, William, my father's grandfather, he was named after him, he was involved in the church as well. So you kind of think, is the family's history very connected to the church's history? Were they always connected with the church? Or was it a newer thing? Now, hopefully, we can find out who William's father is, because so far nobody knows that. May doesn't know it, my mum doesn't know it. So if we can find out who he is, and then we'll find out how far back this link to the Protestant church goes.
Graham is meeting local historian Jim Rees to find out the name of his great-great-grandfather.
Obviously, this is original, that must be all new.
They've come to the yard of the Walkers' old house in Carnew's Wool Green, next to the church where George Walker was sexton. Jim has copies of land valuation books dating back to the 19th century, which record property transfers from one generation to the next.
There's a George Walker. That's my grandfather.
Yes, and
yeah, that would be 1950.
1950. Yeah. Well, we'll just come back.
There's a William Walker.
William Walker.
So that would be my great-grandfather.
Yes. And we have, here's the transfer. William replaced Joseph Walker as a tenant.
Wow. That must be William's father, Joseph Walker in Wool Green.
Through the land valuation books, Graham has discovered that William's father was Joseph Walker, his great-great-grandfather. And the books give another detail about Joseph's life.
This property was transferred to his son William from Joseph's name as a tenant on the Fitzwilliam estate, and you can see it as from Fitzwilliam. Fitzwilliam was the owner all the way through.
Yeah. So the Walkers here in Wool Green, they'd
Yes.
have just been tenant farmers on the Earl of Fitzwilliam's land.
That's it, exactly.
The Fitzwilliam estate was one of the largest in Ireland, covering a fifth of County Wicklow. The estate was founded in the 1630s by Thomas Wentworth. He was at the forefront of the plantation of Ireland when English and Scottish Protestants settled on lands seized from Irish Catholics. Thomas Wentworth's descendants married into the Fitzwilliam dynasty and continued to plant English Protestants on their Irish lands. By Joseph Walker's time, a handful of English landlords, like the 5th Earl Fitzwilliam, still owned 80% of Ireland. In 1845, when Joseph was in his 30s, Ireland was struck by its greatest disaster, the potato famine. Over 1 million people died, and a further 2 million emigrated. Both Protestant and Catholic suffered terribly. But Protestants were often favoured by their English landlords, who encouraged the emigration of poorer Catholics. After the famine, the tenants who remained had the chance to upgrade their holdings. And the land valuation books show that Joseph did just that.
1862-63, he was at number 4, Wool Green. 1865, he was at this place here, number 2 and number 1. Obviously, his income was improving over those years because he'd gone to a bigger house or a more valuable house each time.
Graham's heading back to Carnew Church to find out if Joseph Walker, like George and William, was involved with the Church of Ireland.
Hello, Canon Dunn.
Hello, Graham.
Hello, nice to see you.
Dermot.
Oh, Dermot. Well, now, I, as you probably know, I'm researching the Walkers, and I know that my grandfather George and his father William were very involved in the church, and his father was a guy called Joseph Walker, and I just wondered, do you have any records of his involvement in the church in your papers?
Well, the best records for people involved in the church are the vestry minutes. So this would be the source. I have one such vestry book here, which will detail what people did in the community. Well, here we are, look here.
All right. It was also resolved that Mr. Joseph Walker of Carnew be appointed something of deserted children.
Probably overseer. He was obviously held in very high regard, and more than likely he was one of the church wardens. What's interesting about this is that in church records you get an entry that is really something to do with state, because the care of children of orphans would be a state responsibility.
In Joseph Walker's day, Ireland was ruled from London, and the Protestant Church of Ireland was essentially an arm of government. Church wardens like Joseph acted as local councillors, overseeing the care of orphans and the building of schools and roads. Controversially, they could also levy local taxes from both Protestant and Catholic to pay for the Protestant Church and the continuation of English rule.
The select vestry at the time would have been given the power to set the rate for each householder to pay, and they'd pay into the coffers of the church. irrespective of denomination, whether you were Roman Catholic or Church of Ireland, it didn't make a difference. You had to pay into this fund. Now, most of it went into the clergyman's pocket. He was a rich man at the time.
All right.
But
those were the days.
Yes. But a minority was in government, ruling over the majority. So there must have been a bit of tension around it as well.
In my head, the church is very different from the state, but of course, at this stage, it wasn't. So, although they were respected, you can imagine that amongst, a large proportion of the community, the Roman Catholic community, these were not popular figures. The Walker family were part of the establishment. For previous generations, like Joseph, those tensions between the Catholic community and the Protestant community, I think they must have been quite, there had to be a huge amount of resentment. I'm sensing there was some anger in Carnew. Baptisms, 1813. Go back a bit.
To trace his family's Protestant roots even further back, Graham searches the parish baptism register for a record of Joseph's parents.
10. Joseph, 5th of May, son of Thomas and White Walker. Find out more about these people, because that's mine now. We're now up to my great-great-great-great-grandfather,
yes.
That's very good going. He's back in the late 1700s, isn't he?
He is, and we don't have records going back that far. There's a book missing.
Is there anywhere to find those records?
The only place that you will find something would be in the estate papers of the Lord Fitzwilliam estate, because this was his estate town.
So Graham has discovered that 3 generations of his family were Protestant tenants on the Fitzwilliam estate. And by identifying Thomas Walker, he has traced the family back to the late 18th century.
I'm amazed, I'm thrilled that we've got back so far. And also, now that I know that Joseph's father was Thomas, I could see that Thomas lived through 1798. And that's a big date in Irish history because there was a rebellion then. Basically a bunch of Catholics and people tried to get rid of the English. So I wonder what impact it had on Carnew and whether Thomas was involved or, he must have been because, he was there.
The 1798 rebellion was one of the bloodiest episodes in Irish history. Inspired by the French Revolution, it was started by the Society of United Irishmen, which included both Catholics and Protestant liberals. Their aim was to end English rule and establish a modern democracy. The fighting began in May 1798, when the United Irishmen clashed with English troops up and down the country. With 80% of Irish land owned by English landlords, the dispossessed Catholic majority tended to side with the rebels, whilst most Protestant settlers, like the Walkers, remained loyal to the Crown. Carnew, with its large Protestant population, was a notorious loyalist stronghold. But how did the rebellion affect Thomas and the Walker family? To find out, Graham's come to Enniscorthy, 30 miles south of Carnew. He's meeting historian Ruan O'Donnell at a centre that commemorates the events of 1798.